welcome back to Mr. P's Film Review, and this time I'm here reviewing films from the year 1991, and this time I'm going to be talking about Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, the final installment in the original series of films from the Star Trek series, which reunites the cast of the original series for one final adventure. This film was directed by Nicholas Meyer, who directed Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, and in this film, in the opening sequence, we see that the Klingon moon Praxis has exploded, and it has contaminated their ozone. And we learn that the Klingon Empire has only got 50 years of Earth life left before their oxygen supply is depleted. The Klingons wish to hold a truce, but things get really complicated when Kirk and McCoy are framed for the assassination of the Klingon chancellor Gorkon, played by David Warner. As always guys, thanks for supporting this channel. If you're new to this channel, please hit that subscribe button so you can follow this channel. Hit that alarm bell as well so you can get notifications from me when my videos are going to be uploaded. Give this video a like as well, and also share this video as well to help the channel grow. Star Trek VI represented a new storyline and a new direction in the Star Trek narrative. If you look at parts 2, 3, and 4, they were all one continuous story. So at the end of part 2, we see that Spock saves the Enterprise. After the Genesis torpedo has been detonated, we learn that Spock dies, and then they beam Spock onto the new planet that has been created by the Genesis weapon. Part 3 takes place immediately after the events of Part 2, and Kirk learns from Spock's father, Sarek. Spock isn't dead, he transferred his spirit to McCoy. It's up to Kirk and Co to actually rescue Spock's body, take him back to Vulcan so that he can be resurrected. Part 4 continues directly from the end of Part 3, where we learn that Kirk and Co have to go back to Earth to face the charges for hijacking the Enterprise when they had to go and rescue Spock. Part 5, The Final Frontier, is deemed by many to be the worst in the franchise. It was a critical and commercial disappointment, which could have been a death knell in the franchise. But when it was discussed that a 6th installment was to be made, and it would be the final installment in the series, the executives, creators, writers all got together and thought, okay, how is this going to be their swan song? What are we going to do to learn from our mistakes from Part 5? So things were shaken up a little bit. Number 1, they brought back Nicholas Meyer to direct Part 6, and Nicholas Meyer directed Part 2, The Wrath of Khan, and The Wrath of Khan for me is easily the best installment in the franchise, and it's one of my personal favourites. Leonard Nimoy, who showcased his directing skills by directing Star Trek III, The Search for Spock, and Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home, was not only an executive producer on this film, but he and Nicholas Meyer were responsible for creating the storyline for Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. And we see that they took elements from the 3 previous films. They took the dark tone of Part 2. They took the emotional aspect from Part 3, and they took the humour from Part 4. Added it to The Undiscovered Country, and they gave us a very satisfying ending, and a film that was far superior to the mess that was The Final Frontier. This film is loaded with humour, it's got some really good performances, and Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country borders on the whodunit aspect, because it is discovered that there are actually traitors aboard the Enterprise who are responsible for what happened to Chancellor Gorkon, and it's up to Spock to find out who did it. Whilst I said in the opening sequence that Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country represents a new chapter and a new direction, there are still references to the previous Star Trek films and to previous characters. So Brock Peters, who played Admiral Cartwright in Part 4, he returns for Part 6 and has a more substantive role in this film. Merritt Buttrick, who played Kirk's son, David Marcus, in Parts 2 and 3 and was sadly killed in Part 3, there is a picture that is shown of him, and it is focused on for a few seconds, and that was almost like a pseudo tribute to Merritt Buttrick. Merritt Buttrick died in 1989 of AIDS, and he was only 29 years old. Star Trek VI brings out the big guns. They bring some classically trained actors to participate in this film. Christopher Plummer, playing General Chang, who is over the top and is clearly enjoying his role. And David Warner, a classically trained actor. In film and TV, he's a brilliant voice actor. He plays Chancellor Gorkon. One of my favourite characters in the film, Sulu, who was the helmsman in the original TV series and in Parts 1 to 5. He wasn't at the helm of the Enterprise for this 6th and final installment, and I thought, if you're going to do one final adventure, keep the old school crew together. But this time, he's a captain on a USS Excelsior. And we see that there is a new helmsman, Valeris, played by Kim Cattrall. This is another emotional element that The Undiscovered Country has, because Spock is the sponsor of Valeris, and he's been training her to replace him when he steps down from duty of the Enterprise. And we learn that she has a more significant role in the film as the narrative unfolds. We also have some guest appearances from some high-profile actors. Iman has a guest appearance as Martia. We even see a young Christian Slater as an officer on Sulu's ship. There are a lot of in-jokes as well. One of my favourite jokes, which was really clever, where we learn that Spock has a relationship to Sherlock Holmes. Star Trek 6 has a lot of twists and turns. I like the how it was done element. How they're trying to find out who did it, why, and what their reason was, and what methods they used. It was really clever how they did it, and it added another emotional layer and an impact to Spock. And they discovered that it was actually Valeris, who was actually one of the conspirators on board, and Leonard Nimoy gave a brilliant performance by being calm but by being angry at the same time, especially when he slapped the phaser out of her hand. And I like the fact when they discovered the other conspirators, including Brock Peters' character, Admiral Cartwright, General Chang, and a few others. And Chris Elderman's score was perfect. It was darker than previous incarnations of the Star Trek films, but it matched the narrative perfectly, especially for action, especially for the mystery, especially for the tension, especially for the hope. The action sequences are on point, the visual effects are brilliant, and they can still hold their own after 30 years. Star Trek 6 does have some deleted scenes, and I have seen the director's cut of this film. And the scenes that they cut should have been included, because I felt that it would have expanded the storyline more. One of the deleted scenes where we see Spock, Scotty, and Valeris tally up how many torpedoes they have, just to prove that it wasn't the Enterprise that fired the torpedoes. When Kirk and McCoy have been arrested for the assassination of Chancellor Gorkon, we see that the president, his officials, and a general all wish to discuss a potential idea for rescuing Kirk and McCoy. But that idea is dismissed. And that general has a significant role to play in the final sequence of the film, because when there is a foiled assassination attempt by Kirk, and when Scotty kills the assassin, one of the Klingons sees the assassin bleeding and he says, "This isn't Klingon blood." He pulls off his mask and we see it was actually that general who was speaking to the president about a potential rescue attempt. So I thought that all of these scenes should have been included. Star Trek 6 has one of the best endings of the franchise, where we see that it is just them on the bridge, nobody else. Personally, as a fan, I would have liked to have seen Sulu take the helm just for one last time. And when they're asked to be decommissioned, Spock would say, "If I were human, I would say go to hell." Chekhov asks for the course heading. Kirk says second star to the right and then straight on till morning. And then as the Enterprise heads off, we see these guys sign off with their autographs. Each character just writes their autograph and it just fades into the blackness. And that was a brilliant sign off and a brilliant send off for these guys. And we saw the same thing happen 28 years later in Avengers Endgame, where we see the main Avengers sign off. But Star Trek 6 is my favourite. That and The Wrath of Khan. That franchise did have a few missteps. Parts 1 and Parts 5, easily the worst. But Parts 2 and 6, loved it. Especially Part 6. I would watch that film every year at Christmas time. I'm putting up the decorations. And I loved Star Trek as a kid. You know, when I was a kid, I used to take one of Mum's spoons and bend it and pretend it was the USS Enterprise. And then my mum would bend my ass and start whooping me because, you know what, that was expensive crockery. But Star Trek 6, a brilliant ending to a brilliant franchise. And whilst there have been other spin-offs, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, The Next Generation, this one is my favourite. I love that particular franchise with those characters. So I'll give this one a very, very strong 9 out of 10. So guys, that's my review. As always, thanks for supporting this channel. Hit that subscribe button so you can follow this channel. Hit the alarm bell as well so you can get notifications from me when my video is going to be uploaded. Help give this video a like as well. Leave your comment with what is your favourite Star Trek film from the original series. Part 1 to Part 6. Comment down below and I shall see you all on the next film review. Or as I say on Vulcan, live long and prosper. Take care.